what's up? Sanisa Superbad Estrada here, and I just want to give a huge special shout out to the relay. Thank you so much for all of the continuous support, and thank you for all of the support during and after and before every single fight.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
So I keep getting asked these questions about Conor Benn, so I thought, you know what, let me just make a video. You know, he came out with this statement a few days ago saying his team proved he's innocent, and everybody's gonna find out the truth and all this stuff. Listen, at the end of the day, it's been too long. Sorry, but nothing you can say or do is going to change the public opinion. You got caught twice with illegal substances in your system, and that's it. People who are innocent don't go into hiding for 3 months and then start talking about, oh, well, thank you to my team, who've supported me and who stuck by me, and, everything will come to light. It's boring. No one gives a shit. Sorry. An apology is all that you need to give to the fans, Not even to me. I'm okay. I'll be okay. The people that bought tickets, the people that traveled, the people that paid money and were let down, they deserve an apology. Not, oh, well, I'm going to prove my innocence after failing 2 drugs tests. The only possible way that you could prove your innocence is if there's some video out there you've been pinned down by, multiple males and getting, jabbed in the ass with some type of syringe while you're kicking and screaming and crying, saying, stop it. Nothing else is going to cut it. Sorry. You're going to have to be the bad guy now. You're going to have to accept being booed into arenas. You're going to have to accept being trolled on a daily basis. You're just not going to be the golden child that, you were built up to be. Eventually we will fight. But the main thing is that you own up, you man up, and you do the right thing, man. That's all I can say.
Although it's not all that Chris Eubank Jr. has had to say about it. A few days ago, Chris Eubank Jr. revealed that he was not told about Conor Benn's first positive drug test and only made aware the second time. I wouldn't have accepted the fight in August if I'd known he'd failed a test before. By the time I did find out, it was too late.
Chris is right,
About public opinion, public perception of Conor Benn ever since this entire fiasco started. Conor Benn can assert his innocence to the public as much as he likes. That same public, they've already made up their minds because that's how their minds work. And no matter how many lengthy messages,
Conor Benn assumes that everybody that heard about what happened 3 months ago, 3 months later, is still invested in that story, still following it.
3 months ago, it might have been a hot topic, but it was a hot topic because of the canceled fight. 3 months ago, this might have been all anybody was talking about, but 3 months later, it's cold product.
In reference to a now defunct fight. People just aren't that invested. They likely aren't keeping up with any new developments in this situation because it's no situation at all. The fight's canceled, and as far as they're concerned, you got caught.
I don't often agree with things that Chris Eubank Jr. says, but I have to agree in this instance. You can't come out with a word sandwich after all this has happened and think you're going to sway public perception in your favor. The saving grace and the silver lining for Conor Benn is that the public is fickle.
The mob is, and where 3 months ago it might have seemed like they were ready to crucify you with their tiki torches out, 3 months later, they don't really care that much.
They're still going to call you a cheater. They're still going to call you a ped user in some circles whenever they get the chance, whenever you give them one. But for the most part, people really aren't as invested as Conor Benn might think. It's been 6 years since Tyson Fury tested positive for nandrolone, an anabolic steroid and a banned substance. It's been approximately 6 years since all of that happened. How many people here today...
How many times do you hear Simon Jordan or Gareth A. Davies bring it up?
Bunsey. How many times do you hear Steve Bunce bring it up? Dev Sani. Umar at IFL TV, Coogan Cassius, Rob Tebbett,
Or Andy Purewall. How often do you hear people bring up Tyson Fury's Nandrolone case from 6 years ago?
What about Lucas Brown?
Him too.
He tested positive for a banned substance 2 times on 2 separate occasions. So did Luis Ortiz.
Tested positive for a banned substance 2 times on 2 separate occasions for 2 separate substances.
I can go on, but the point is that where Conor Benn might feel the need to post these word sandwiches in order to explain himself and explain his situation, maybe get back in the public's favor, get on their good side, where he might think that it's necessary to do this, it really isn't. The public has already made up its mind about this.
More time passes, the less they care about it. That is, unless you test positive for another banned substance.
Then you're right back where you started. Conor Benn himself stated, "My team have proven my innocence and the truth will soon come out. Until then, I won't be commenting further due to confidentiality."
How Conor Benn's team have proven his innocence, your guess is as good as mine, but I do expect to see him back in the ring next year. At minimum, that's what I think is going to happen.
Oh, he'll be back. He'll be back. Testing positive for a banned substance, it didn't keep Tyson Fury away from the ring all that long. I mean, not that long. It certainly didn't keep Lucas Brown away from the ring, Luis Ortiz, even Jarrell Miller, who tested positive on more than one occasion for more than one banned substance in one instance. Jean Pascal, he tested positive for about 4 banned substances in one instance. And he's already back, set to fight in an IBF final eliminator.
Testing positive for a banned substance. It didn't keep Povetkin away from the ring. More recently, it didn't keep Oscar Valdez out of the ring.
His fight was actually allowed to go on in spite of his positive finding. Essentially what I'm getting at is what I told you before. Conor Benn testing positive for a banned substance is not the end of the world, and it certainly isn't the end of his career. It doesn't have to be. Plenty of fighters with profiles have tested positive for banned substances, and their careers were allowed to go on. His will as well.
The first step is usually the hardest. It's going to be awkward at first, seeing him return to action.
Yeah, it might be. A little, and people will bring up the banned substance stuff. There's going to be a resurgence of conversations in reference to that, but as stated, it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of his career. I expect to see him back in action next year.
And whether or not he's innocent or he isn't innocent, whether or not he's telling the truth or he's lying, who really gives a fuck?
As far as what Chris Eubank Jr. had to say about it, I reiterate, he's not wrong. There are people out there, they've already made up their minds about Conor Benn. They don't believe him, but they don't care that much either.
Believe it or not, that's the silver lining for him.
Conor, explaining himself and asserting his innocence the way that he is, well, I mean, if you're a boxing fan, this can't be your first rodeo. We've read that book before.
Got that right.
The show must go on, and for Chris Eubank Jr., it's going to late next month opposite the ring, Liam Beefy Smith at the AO Arena in Manchester in what is being billed as a Sky Sports box office pay-per-view. It's a box office fight. Whether or not this is pay-per-view worthy,
It isn't a title fight.
it's a good fight. For what it's worth, given how both men go about fighting a fight, it makes for an all-action shootout, and somebody's going to get stopped. Somebody's going to get knocked out. I think that somebody is Liam Beefy Smith. I've said that before.
Whether or not this is pay-per-view worthy, however, you'd have to ask a Brit how they feel about that.
Still unclear as to whether or not ESPN Plus will pick this fight up, make it available for American subscribers by way of an American broadcast via the UK.
If they do, the fight, watching it, will come at no additional charge to me and you. We'll get to see it as part of our ESPN Plus subscription.
But we don't yet know that ESPN Plus is going to pick it up. They don't pick up every Sky Sports card, not every card.
I don't think they picked up last weekend's card with Chris Billum-Smith and Carolyn Dubois.
We'll see if they pick up this one. Undercard information has since been made available. Richard Riakporhe versus Krzysztof Glowatsky, a fight that the people at Boxer and Sky have been working on for months, and I mean months.
I really don't know what took them so long.
The amount of time it's taken to get this fight over the line, you would have thought that they would have staged it before this year was out, as it's taken many months to get the fight done, get the fight over the line. Richard Riakporhe, unbeaten Richard Riakporhe, hard-punching guy at cruiserweight.
Gone from prospect to contender level opposite the ring, a former champion in Krzysztof Glowatsky.
You get the sense that they have big plans for Richard if he can make it past Krzysztof, especially now that Lawrence Okolie has officially migrated from Matchroom over to Boxer, I'm sure that Richard Riakporhe versus Lawrence Okolie is a conversation. We're also going to be seeing the ring return of former WBO heavyweight champion Joseph Parker opposite the ring Jack Macy.
This will be his first appearance since that ass kicking he took at the hands of Joe Joyce. We're going to see
how he looks. We're going to see what if anything, he has left. Those kinds of systematic beatings, they can take years out of a fighter's career. This is all set to go down on the undercard of Eubank versus Smith, Liam Smith.
Former WBO junior middleweight champion Liam Smith, who I think is a more ambitious fighter than Chris Eubank Jr., though not as good a physical specimen.
Not as durable, perhaps. Not as big a puncher.
Not at middleweight. I love the fucking guy.
And I'd love it if he pulled the upset on Chris Eubank Jr., who, over the years, I've not been a fan of, and I'm still not a fan of him now, though if we're going to be objective,
whether you like him or not, Chris Eubank Jr., he's the favorite here. He's got the edge.
Chris Eubank Jr.'s video address to Conor Benn, addressing Conor Benn's assertions that he is innocent and he will be vindicated. You may have noticed that Chris Eubank Jr., he actually left the door open for them to revisit what was supposed to be their fight.
You'll notice that Chris Eubank Jr. is not too hung up on Conor Benn testing positive for a banned substance, not once, but twice. He's not worried about that. He's not hung up on it. So why are you?
There's something to be said about that, though I won't say it here, is that would consume too much of this segment's time. Conor Benn.
Chris Eubank Jr. is still willing to fight him, in spite of the controversy, and maybe it's because controversy
can sometimes make a fight more attractive, more appealing. The sensationalism, the backstory, the backdrop. I mean, think about it. The controversial draw score in Wilder versus Fury 1 led to a lot more buys, a lot more pay-per-view sold in Wilder versus Fury 2.
Controversy gets attention. Controversy sells. There's a lot of controversy around Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr.
Enough that it's a fight that's worth revisiting. And I did figure that when this entire fiasco started, they would not be able to salvage this situation between Conor and Chris before this year was out. But next year,
I figured they were not going to be able to do this fight and salvage this situation before this year was out. But next year yields more possibilities, more opportunities.
So it's hardly Chris Eubank Jr.'s only option moving forward, should he make it past Liam Smith. Eubank versus Golovkin.
Chris Eubank Jr., after having avoided a prime Gennady Golovkin, quite shamelessly, I might add, in the subsequent years that followed, he's made it clear that he wants to get this older, more vulnerable version of Gennady Golovkin in the ring, and that's a distinct possibility. It could happen.
Yet another distinct possibility, another fight that can happen, is a Eubank Jr. versus Yanibek Alimkhanulai fight. You know, the relationship exists between Sky Sports Top Rank and ESPN to where such a fight is a possibility. In that fight, even though Yanibek would be the reigning defending champion, Chris Eubank Jr. would be the A-side.
Yanibek's last performance has a lot to do with why I think this fight is a possibility. Yanibek looked very human opposite the ring Denzel Bentley, and Denzel Bentley is not as proven a fighter as Chris Eubank Jr.
Yanibek looking the way that he did, well, at minimum, I think it makes a fight between him and Chris more possible. You know, Eubank versus Alimkhanulai, Eubank versus Bentley in the United Kingdom as well. You could sell that.
Chris Eubank, he's got options. He's just got to make it through Liam Smith, and I think that he can. I think that he will.
He's got options not exclusive to revisiting a Conor Benn fight. I think that Gennady Golovkin, I think that Yanibek Alimkhanulai, even Denzel Bentley, I think those are all viable options for Chris.
Sky Sports and Boxer, they're willing to pay to play.
They need the content. They need the action if they are to try and surpass what Eddie Hearn and Matchroom have built in the United Kingdom. And just in keeping with the theme of what are now defunct fights and what is set to go down in their place, a couple of days ago it was announced that the upcoming Efe Ajagba versus Oscar Rivas fight for early next year in January on the 14th.
Oscar Rivas is pulled out injured. Says he has an eye injury.
Which is unfortunate because I was actually looking forward to this fight between him and Efe Ajagba. And Efe is now set to face Stephen Shaw, who originally was going to be facing Guido Vianello on the undercard.
As the co-main event to the main event. In truth, I don't actually believe that Oscar Rivas is injured.
The fight itself, the fight in its entirety, taking on someone like Efe Ajagba when you've been out of action as long as Oscar Rivas has been out of action. This was billed as a heavyweight contest, you understand? Heavyweight, not bridgerweight.
Where Oscar Rivas reigns as bridgerweight champion.
This guy hasn't fought since the Ryan Rositsky fight, so he's gonna turn around, move back up to heavyweight, and take on Efe? That's counterintuitive. As it stands, the story is that Oscar injured his eye, so he's not gonna be fighting Efe. Unbeaten up-and-comer from the US of A, Stephen Shaw, is going to be standing in Oscar's place, sporting a professional record of 18 wins, no losses, and no draws, with 13 knockouts.
An unbeaten up-and-comer that I've heard this and that about, though an unbeaten up-and-comer that's flying a little low on the radar.
A busy one, a productive one, as Stephen Shaw has had a rather productive year. He fought 4 times this year, 4 times.
Shared the ring with 2 familiar fighters, 2 familiar journeymen, 2 tough ones in Philadelphia's own Joey DeVaco and Rydell Booker. Very stubborn Rydell Booker.
You might be familiar with that name. That's the same Rydell Booker that took on unbeaten Jermaine Franklin a few years ago. A few years ago, he shared the ring with Kubrat Pulev. More recently, this year, in November, last month, he was opposite the ring Stephen Shaw.
Unbeaten Stephen Shaw, who won a unanimous decision against Rydell Booker, saw action 4 times. 4 times this year, 30 years old, standing in at 6'4" with an 81-inch wingspan. Good physical dimensions for today's heavyweight division.
Only 30 years old, set to take on what is arguably the toughest fight of his career against the toughest guy, Nigeria's own Efe Ajagba. Tall guy, lanky guy, hard-punching guy.
Great physical specimen, great dimensions for the weight, good power. The drawback with Efe is, he doesn't seem to have much ring savvy, ring IQ, situational awareness and things like that. That was evident in the Frankie Sanchez fight.
A real snoozer, real awful fight to watch, I must say, but a fight that put on full display that Efe Ajagba, he is a bit limited, sporting a professional record of 16 wins with 1 loss, just 1 loss, no draws, and 13 knockouts.
You know what I think? I think that Efe, he's got his limitations, he does, but the Rivas people likely thought about it and told themselves, we don't need this fight.
We don't need this gamble. We're champions down there at Bridgerweight. For moving up to heavyweight and taking on Efe Ajagba in a dangerous fight, we can stay down here at Bridgerweight, take care of our mandatory challenger.
What's the guy's name, Rosansky?
Oscar became Bridgerweight champion late last year in October opposite the ring Ryan Rositsky, and he hasn't seen action all of this year.
He has a mandatory challenger outstanding at Bridgerweight in Lukas Rosansky, who he was supposed to fight at some point this year, but logistics issues, the fight didn't happen.
It was less than ideal for Oscar Rivas, who hasn't fought this entire year, to move back up to heavyweight, where he used to campaign, to take on somebody like Efe. Efe has seen action in the last 12 months. He has since rebounded off that loss to Frankie Sanchez. He's back in the winner's bracket.
Don't misunderstand me. I liked the fight. I loved the fight, but I get the sense that the Rivas people, they're not really injured. They just thought about it and looked at this as a needless risk.